I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like anyone else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played a glitchy or hacked game before as well, though I don't think I want to play one after the experience I had. It started in a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed, till I noticed, out of my peripheral vision, that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox, as usual, and left. I paused my game to go see what was in the mail. The only thing that the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle, whom I haven't heard from 2 weeks. I know this because I recognized his handwriting, though what was weird in how it looked badly written and scratchy and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry. This is to what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late. And I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me. And if you don't destroy the CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him. But do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Just destroy it, please, Kyle. Well, I was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked of me. I didn't think that a simple game disc would do anything bad to him or me. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, I looked at the disc, and it looked like an ordinary computer CD disc, except it had a black marker on it written Sonic.exe, and it was much unlikely Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from somewhere else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on it written on the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it, since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on my computer, and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome! Because like I said earlier, I love the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed start. It was a split second when I saw the title image turned into something much different. Something that I now consider horrifying. Before cutting to black, I remember what the image looked like. In the split second before the game cut to black, the sky had darkened. The title emblem was rusted and ruined. The Sega 1991 was now instead Sega 666, and the water had turned red like blood, except it looked hyper-realistic. But the freakiest thing that was in a split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding with 2 glowing red dots staring straight at me, and his smile had stretched wider up in the edge of his face. It was rather disturbing about the image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch, or forgot about it. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. And another weird thing that happened, the save file selected from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up. And I was like, what the hell? What is this doing for the first Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed something was off. The background was dark and cloudy. The sky was a bad Stardust Speedway level from the Sonic CD. And there were only 3 save files. The music was that of creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound, only it was extended and seemed to have been in reverse. And the image from the save file where you see a preview of the level you're on, just red static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character selection. It showed only Tails, Knuckles to my surprise, and Dr. Robotnik. Now, I was sure something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? That's when I realized that this wasn't a glitchy game. It was a hacked game. It definitely looked hacked. It was real creepy, but a smart gamer must have made it. I wasn't scared, at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyways, shaking off the creepy feeling I had, I picked file 1 and chose Tails, and then got started. The game froze for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh. It sounded an awful lot like Kefka, guy from the Final Fantasy, before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more. Then it showed the typical level title thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text only showed Hill, Act 1. The screen faded, and the level title vanished, revealing Tails in Green Hill Zone for Sonic 1. The music was different though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Anyways, I started playing and had Tails running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that Tails was running along the level. There was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That was the peaceful music started to lower, down into a slow, deep tone very slowly as I kept going. I suddenly saw something and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I never saw him have before. So I had to move along, and he kept that worried look on his face. As he kept moving, I saw more and more dead animals. Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowered, and he moves past more dead animals. I was shocked to see how they'd all died. They looked like somebody killed them in a rather gruesome way. A squirrel that was hanging off a tree that appeared to be his entrails hanging. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After more seconds, there was more and more animals, and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails moving. After a minute had passed, after the music stopped, Tails was running up the hill and then stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the screen with his back against Tails, with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile flattered. Obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not acting as if it was totally obvious of Tails' presence, Tails walked slowly towards Sonic, and I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this had to have been a cutscene. Suddenly I began to have a growing feeling of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger or something bad was going to happen to him. I heard a faint static growing louder as Tails was but inches away from Sonic, and stopped and stuck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as the static grew louder. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those red glowing dots, just like in the title image, though there wasn't a smile. What had happened was the screen turned black and the static sound was off. It stayed black for about 7 seconds, and then a white text appeared forming a message saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue the game, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I was taken to a different level with the level title now saying, "Hide and Seek." This time, I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked at me as though he was scared out of his wits at the time. He actually looked at me and made a frantic gesture as if he wanted me to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the 4th wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could and made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of the creepy theme when you meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was playing, as I made Tails trek through the desolated forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly, I heard a creepy laugh again. That awful Kefka laugh. right after 10 seconds had passed, as I helped Tails run through the forest, and I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere on the screen, again with those black red eyes. The music changed to the suspenseful, drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining up on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose that Sprite was making looking awfully similar to the Metal Sonic flying pose in Sonic CD, except it was just Sonic, and he had his black and red eyes again. Only this time he had the most deranged look grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving to this poor little fox that he gained up on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, it must have been another cutscene. The music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there starting to cry for about 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch, and I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down those blackened eyes of Sonic's as a grin slowly grew from his face, and he looked down at the horrified fox. I couldn't do anything but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went black. It was a loud screeching noise that only lasted 5 seconds. The text turned, only this time it said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" And that god-awful laugh came with it. I was so shocked by what had just happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? I shook the shock of all I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen itself, which was flickering with red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding. His orange fur had gone from black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came back, and the screen cut to black again, and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time, the level said, "You can't run." It was really freaking me out now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch or a hack, or just some kind of sick, twisted joke, or anything really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the Scrape Brain Zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark, reddish, cloudy sky, but the music that creeped me out the most, it sounded like Gaiga's theme for after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did, though not as much. More rather, he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked as if he wasn't sure about what was going on, but I made him move anyway. He ran down straight pathway in this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple times, then laughed came. Then, after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt the growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible was going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated walking down the blood-stained road, but I still kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes, and the red static appeared again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but black screen with the text saying, "Found you." I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, the red static came again, and then I was back to the level Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time, the high-pitched squealing from the Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be a pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished into black pixelated smoke before I could even land a hit. A terrible laugh went off again, and Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and then I made him punch again, and Sonic vanished again laughing. Knuckles panicked even more, and then I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched at his head, sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then, in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles, and the screen went black, another distorted, screeching noise that lasted for about 3 seconds. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with, so little time. Would you agree? What the hell? Just what is going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think about it. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time, the second file box had Knuckles in a TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. And he had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think those were actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files. But I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So, I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap. Wish I hadn't, because then I had begun to have those most disturbing nightmares. It was pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp of huge high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets you too." Their cries had died out of then I heard Sonic laugh. His laugh sounded a lot like the distorted Kefka laugh again. While I was still in my dream, I also heard a voice. That Kefka laugh voice. It said, "You're a lot of fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle, though. He didn't last very long." I was scared and looking around for source of the voice. Won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends. I saw him walking towards me, flickering in and out several directions. You can't run. You're in my world now, just like the others. When he grabbed me and I saw his bleeding black and red eyes, grinning face, I woke up. Thinking about it still. Don't think I'll ever get over that. After a couple hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and selected Robotnik next. I still thought this was wacky, playing as Robotnik. But anyway, the level title appeared again, and this time it said, "Just Dots," which I found really freaky. This time, I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look. It was from another classic Sonic game, I guess. Though, it was a pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were a dark grayish purple with animation candlelights, and a few dark bloodstains here and there. And there was a dark red curtain hanging from the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, the red curtain swayed very slowly. But whenever you're playing the game, you could barely see it move. Music was oddly pleasant, a piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song. But I knew better. This was a song played in The Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails or Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turned his head left and then to the right, at least twice, and then shrugs at me, as if he had no idea where or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his unusual running animation, you know, when you beaten him and then at the end of the classic Sonic game and you chase him. As we continued going through the hallway, then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downward. Now, I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though I pressed onward. As I left Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches are now an eerie blue. Then we landed onto another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs. This one was much longer. It took at least a full minute. And then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again, and the music slowly faded until it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned more dark red, and the torches were a black flame now. When Robotnik landed into the third hallway, I noticed he looked really creeped out, though he tried to hide it. I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly, Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik, the same way he did Knuckles, and then the red static. The red static lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it showed me a most unpleasant image. The image showed a hyper-realistic of Sonic standing in the darkness, where you could only see his face, while his head and torso faded into black. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean he looked so real. You couldn't actually see the lines in the blue fur, as if you could actually feel fur if you touched the screen. His face, God. He had the most horrifying smile I've ever seen. And that's saying something considering that I saw the image of the start of the game. His eyes wide and black, and once again crying blood, which also looked hyper-realistic. And there were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched to the sides of his face, like a cat-like expression. Very sharp fangs, much like the werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking. Somewhat yellowish, and from the look of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs, as if he ate some sort of animal. I stared at the gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me with that face. It just took 10 seconds for it to go away out of my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times. On the third time I heard a Kefka laugh, except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. I went back to the image again, except this time there was a text again, it was messed up, but pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since in this game. It said, "I am God." It was when I read the message while looking at Sonic when it hit me. I realized right there and then, this Sonic was a monster, pure evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. All of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys, and this game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world, and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Then it stopped and showed nothing but a black screen. As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. "Ready for round 2, Tom?" The Kefka laugh, now sounding more clear as if Sonic was right behind me, playing again 3 times as I looked at the next in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time the third save file had a TV image of Robotnik, in the same torment state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned a dull gray, his mustache dropped, and his blackened glasses broke, and blood is coming from them, as he had mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik and cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they're going through. I was forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by the horrid hedgehog, and always will be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified at what just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who plays this game in more ways than one. And then when he gets bored, he drags you into the game. Literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you always as his toys.